guys, it's me, Crystal, and today I'm going to show you how to make this chunky crochet throw blanket. For this blanket, I used Hometown Yarn by Lion Brand, and this is the bonus bundle, which is larger than the regular size skein of this yarn. And I'm using Dallas Gray as the color. And I just wanted to show you, this has 162 yards per skein, and it is washable and dryable, and it is a super bulky yarn. And I'm holding two skeins together at once, and I will tell you this blanket is heavy. It ended up weighing about 6 pounds by the end, so just know that. I'll also be using a 15mm crochet hook, and we'll be holding the two strands of yarn together. So to start, you're going to hold your yarn and wrap it around your fingers to make your slip knot. Insert your hook into the loop there, pull up a loop, then remove your fingers and pull the ends to tighten up the knot. Now we're going to make our starting chain. So you just yarn over and pull through, and you want to make sure not to make it too tight. Keep it, pretty loose so your hook can move through there easily. And you're going to make 67 chains all together. So just try to make them all about the same size and make them even. And here's how it looks at this point. And now we're going to do our first row. So what we're going to do here, instead of working into the front of the chain like normal, we're actually going to work into the back, and we're going to skip the first two chains. So if you turn your chain over, you'll see there's these bumps on the back, and this is called like the back bump or the back loop. And that's what we're going to be working into for each stitch for our first row. This gives you a cleaner edge on the first row. So here's the front where you normally would work. You'd normally go up under this loop right here. But if you turn it over, there's this back bump, and that's where we're going to work. So here's the back bump, and we're going to skip two chains, yarn over. So you're going to skip the first one, skip the second one, and you're going to work into that third one, into the back bump. Then you're going to yarn over and pull it through like this. You'll have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over again, and you're going to pull it through all 3 loops. And this is a half double crochet. And skipping those 2 chains at the beginning just gives us our initial height there. So our first stitch is the right size. And here we're going into the next back bump and do the same thing. There's 3 loops on our hook, yarn over and pull through all the loops. And now we've got 2 half double crochets, and then yarn over again and go under the next back bump. And you're just going to do this all the way down this row. There we go. Here's how the first 3 look, and we got our starting chain over there. And the starting chain does not count as a stitch for this blanket. So just continue making half double crochets in the back bump of each chain until you get to the end, and I'll show you when I get to the end how the last stitch will look. All right, now I'm at the end. This is my last back bump loop here, right next to that knot we'd started with. And I'm just doing my half double crochet, and there we go. So now our foundation row, or our first row, is done into our chain, and we can turn and do the next row. So to turn, you're gonna just start here, and you're gonna chain 2, and you're gonna do this for each row. So there's 1, and there's 2. And that's our turning chain, and then you turn your work around. And now this is a little different, but it's not hard. See, we have our half double crochets, and with half double crochet you got your 2 top loops, but then you also have this third loop here, this little extra row of loops, and that's the loop we're going to be working into instead of the top 2. And this will make a really pretty knitted effect in rows on each side of the blanket. So we're going to work into this front third loop row. What we're going to do is yarn over, and then this is the first third loop of the first stitch. So you're going to go up underneath that loop like that, and then you're going to yarn over and pull through, and you'll have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all the loops. There we go. So that's a half double crochet again. Yarn over, and you're going to do the same thing for the next stitch. See, we're just ignoring those top 2 loops and working only under the third loop. So pull it through and then yarn over again and pull it through all the loops. And you're just going to repeat that going down this row. And this is what you're going to do for every row of this blanket. It's very easy and it's nice and relaxing to work on. And in just a second, I will show you what the pattern on the back ends up looking like, the neat knitted look that this gives. But you see, it's just very simple. Just remember to only work under that third loop instead of the top two. So here's the first 4 half double crochets on this side. And then if you flip it, you'll see you get these cool V's that kind of has this knitted look. And it'll alternate the side that it's on each row. So just continue making your half double crochets in the third loop, and I will show you what we do when we get to the end of the row. All right, now we're at the end. We got 2 left to go. So here's my second to the last half double crochet. And then the last one is right here on the end. It's kind of hard to see that third loop, but it's there. Get under it. There we go. And make our last half double crochet. There we go. And there's our first real row. And now we're gonna chain 2 again. So chain 1, chain 2. And now we're gonna turn our work. And you're just gonna keep doing that exact same thing for each row. So it's very, very easy. And you see it gets this really pretty texture. So yarn over, again, it's that first loop on the front there, that third loop. You're gonna go under that and then just continue working your way across, just like we did. Just ignore those top 2 loops and work in that front loop. Yarn over and pull through, and yarn over and pull through all 3. And just continue this until you get to the end of this row, and you're going to continue this for all the remaining rows. We're going to do 51 rows all together for this blanket, or that's what I did. And that will give you a throw blanket size, which is approximately 48 inches wide by 54 inches long. And like I said, this blanket is heavy because we're using 2 pieces of yarn at a time, and it's this thick yarn. So just know that going into this, but it is a very luxurious blanket. And just continue on, and here I am at the end of this row, and I'm just chaining 2, turning and repeating until I have 51 rows all together. It won't be long before you're going to run out of yarn, and I ran out of yarn on one skein before the other just by a few inches, but I will show you how I attach new yarn with a really cool magic knot so you don't have a bunch of ends sticking out everywhere. Okay, so here I am, my short end, I just ran out of yarn, and here's my new yarn. And what I'm going to do is take my new piece of yarn and I'm going to lay it over my old one, and there is a long end, probably about 5 inches or 6 inches of yarn sticking up there. See how the end is kind of up there. And what I'm going to do now is take the end that I ran out with, and I'm going to tie it around the new piece of yarn. So you just wrap it around that new piece of yarn like this and tie a knot. Just tie around that new piece of yarn like so. So we got that done, and now you're going to take the end, that long end that you left of your new yarn, and you're going to tie it around the old yarn right here. This will make sense in a minute, I promise. So just wrap it around and just tie a simple knot. And tighten it up around that piece of yarn. So okay, this is going to look like this at this point. Then you pull on both ends, and you pull really good and tight. You want those knots to be like really close together. And this makes it so you can cut the excess yarn off and it won't come undone. So you just snip the yarn there really pretty close to the knot. I mean, I left a tiny bit, but You don't want it to, you don't need to leave a big long tail. And there you go. And then whenever you're crocheting, the knot will just get hidden in your work. You won't really see it. And it's so much easier than having to weave in all the ends whenever you add new yarn. So just continue, and then I continued a few more stitches, and then my other end ran out. And I'm going to do the same thing again, so I'll show you one more time. Here's my new yarn. There's my old yarn that ran out, and I'm laying it over the old yarn, and I'm leaving that long tail at the top, like so. Then I'm going to take the old yarn, sorry I had to move, and tie a knot around the new yarn with the old yarn. So just make a simple knot and tighten it around that new strand of yarn like so. And there we go. And then you take the end of the new yarn and you're going to tie it around the old yarn right here. And once you get that second knot tied, just a really basic knot, and tighten it up. And then you pull on both pieces of yarn. Just leave the ends there and then pull on the end, or pull on the other ends of the yarn until those knots come together, and pull really good and tight to make sure they're kind of like merged together there. And then once you do that, you can cut off the excess yarn from the ends, and your join will just kind of get hidden in your work, which is pretty cool. So you see I'm cutting pretty close to these knots, but because of the way they're pulling on each other, the ends won't come undone. So it's pretty cool. And then you just continue on, and you're going to do that anytime you run out of yarn. I ended up using 10 skeins of that yarn for this blanket. I didn't finish using the last 2 skeins, I just partially used them, but that's how much it took to make this blanket. Once you get to your last row and you've finished your very last row, we're going to go ahead and cut our yarn, our 2 strands that we're treating like one strand. And then all you do to finish off is just yarn over and pull through the loop, and then pull the yarn to tighten it, and it'll tighten that up and secure it for you. And now what we're going to do, here's the finished blanket so far, and you see it's just such a nice texture, and it's so luxurious feeling, and it is quite heavy, but I love a heavy blanket personally. What we're going to do now, just for fun, is add some tassels to the ends. I thought that would make it really kind of luxurious and pretty and make it look like something you'd see in like a fancy magazine. So I got, I'm just using a self-healing mat that's about 7 inches long. You can use a piece of cardboard also that's about 7 inches long. And I'm just taking one strand of my yarn that I had left from my blanket, and I'm going to wrap it around this self-healing mat or whatever you have. And I wrapped it around 20 times. And this gave me a pretty good sized tassel. I wanted it to be big, but not like, you know, too big. The first one I made was too big. I ended up settling on 20 wraps. And then I cut the yarn and I grabbed another piece of yarn that's maybe about 10 inches to 12 inches long. And cut that. And here's where my ends are. So here's the top part of the tassel. And we're going to thread the yarn through on the top side, and then we're going to just pull it up to the top and tie a knot to secure it here. And just pull it as tight as you can. But we're going to wrap the tassel so you don't have to worry about it holding everything in place. It'll make sense in a minute. But just tie a knot here. And there you go. And now we're going to cut the yarn on this side to make the tassel ends. So just carefully thread it through there and cut. And then you can move your whatever you use to wrap it with aside. And here's our almost finished tassel. Now we're going to add a little wrapped part here at the top to hold it in place. So I'm just grabbing my yarn. I didn't even cut it yet. I'm just leaving it attached to the skein. And I'm taking the end and holding it down by the ends of the tassel. So it'll just blend in with them, and then I'm holding it up at the top and wrapping it around the top and about 1 inch down from where we tied it. And you just wrap it around like 5 or 6 times until you're happy with how it looks. Here we are. And then you take your starting end and your wrapping end, and you're just going to tie a knot to secure it. So I'll just pull it through there and I hold it in place. It doesn't come undone, but then pull it really good and tight and tie a double knot. And then I just left my ends like this. This knot didn't really bother me, and I cut the end to be even with the tassel, and then it just blends right in. And then you can kind of adjust it and pull on the top of your tassel to make it look nice and even and not like all squished down. And here's our finished tassel, and all we have to do is tie it onto the corner. So here's one of my corners, and I'm just inserting the hanging cord for our tassel in there. And I just tied a basic knot to tie these on. I kind of have the thought that when I wash this blanket, I'm probably going to remove the tassels just to be safe, but that's up to you. So I just tied one really easy knot, and I'll just untie that whenever, or I don't know. I don't know if I will for sure. I'll let you know and update if I do, but I'm thinking I'm going to untie the tassels before I wash it. And then after that, I took the ends and I threaded them onto a large eye needle, and you can do it this way, or you can just feed the ends into the blanket, like weave them in. But for this one, I stuck the ends down through the tassel just to see how that would look. And if I could just hide the ends down there. And I wanted to leave long ends because, like I said, I have plans to untie these tassels if I want to wash this. So for this one, I wove the ends into the tassel itself, and then later I'll show you I wove the ends of the other ones actually into the blanket because it was easier. And there is our finished tassel attached to our corner of our blanket, and I just love how these look. I think it turned out really great. Oh, and then one more thing, at the end you can trim your tassels if they're not quite perfect and get them so they're nice and even. And then you just have to repeat that for all the other corners of your blanket. Before I add a tassel to this end, I'm going to go ahead and weave the end of the yarn in. This is where we finished off when we got done crocheting. So you can just thread the ends of your yarn onto a large eye needle and just weave them under several stitches and then cut the excess yarn off. So you want to just make it so you don't really see it. So stick it wherever it seems like a good place to stick it. And weave it in, and I like to weave it under several stitches and try to leave a little bit of a tail because sometimes things come undone or they come out and you want to be able to fix it later. There we go. Cut off the excess. And we're good. And I'm doing the same thing. This is my starting end, which is a little bit shorter. And I'm just weaving it under a bunch of stitches and cutting the excess yarn. And then all it's left to do is add the rest of my tassels, and I'm adding one here, and this is the one that I'll show you. I wove the end of it through the blanket instead of through the tassel. So that's another option. You see, I'm just weaving it through. And then you just cut the little excess yarn and it's good to go. So just repeat that with all your tassels and your blanket is complete. I absolutely love this blanket. It is so cozy and soft and squishy. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did, please leave a like, comment, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my future videos. Thanks for watching!